I was just listening to some of the reactions and commentary around the David Wood live stream. And I've heard of this person before, but I never really listened to any of his content or anything like that. Original reaction video that I was listening to was informative. So I would encourage you, before you formulate an opinion or a judgment, to go listen to the actual live stream, okay? Go listen to him specifically yourself before you make a judgment. That's important. See, before I did that, my initial reaction was like, what the? That's wild, you know? But then that got cleared up for me right away once I listened to it in its correct context. Okay, so the first thing to understand is that the devil, the kingdom of darkness, seeks to create chaos and confusion and lies, the author of lies. Okay, he also will lay heavy the spirit of judgment on anyone who is attempting to serve God's kingdom. Okay, so keep all of those things in mind. There are people, a lot of them, of all different ages, all over every social platform right now, that are fully demonstrating, exploiting, wide open, with no shame, monetizing Smeg's work. Okay? So also keep that in mind when you're listening to him. Now, once I went over and I listened to the actual live stream that he was on, right away, I felt grateful. You have to be able to understand where your perspective is coming from, okay? And if you're unhealed, if you are carrying around the spirit of judgment, you will always misjudge others because you're not judging yourself accurately. It's like your gauge of measure is always going to be off. If, before giving my full opinion about this, not that you asked for it, but I'm going to share it because I think it's important. Actually, I know it's important. And if you don't know me, I have an intimate and personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I have since I was a small child, and I have a deep faith that carried me through for a couple of years while an entire group of Satanists tried to actually take me out. So I don't have a criminal record. I don't have any addictions, and I don't have any toxicity in my life. And this group of people targeted me. Okay? You probably would never know what these people actually do in their spare time for entertainment. And part of the reason that they do things in the shadows is because they do mask behind things like religion, behind wealth, behind any kind of socioeconomical hierarchy that they're a part of. So you wouldn't even know what they get down in. But I do. And what I also know, though, is because of my personal journey, and we all have a journey. Every one of us is born with a spirit that has a purpose in this world. And it's just that 90-something%, 2.6% of people don't see the value in their own spirit, or they carry some kind of dark energy themselves, like jealousy, greed, insecurities, things like that. And so they're not able to access their own wealth. What I have learned through my journey, though, because I have been aligned with people who have suffered from all sorts of addictions, every drug you can think of, alcohol, shopping, men, crime, fighting. And I've had a lot of friends that have dealt with anxiety, depression, BPD, and I was born to the queen of the narcs. So, and I myself had to heal codependency before I could start serving God effectively. But a part of my healing and a part of my learning was a deeper understanding of trauma. And specifically, people with complex trauma. And even more specific than that, children with complex trauma. And a lot of people don't realize this, but your consciousness, your psyche, is formed, I think it's like between, like 0 and 8 years old, okay? And so a child that experiences trauma from infancy, toddlerhood, especially if it's repeat trauma, will have damage to their actual psyche. Their frontal cortex may not fully develop. In spiritual language, I call this the separation of the spirit from the soul. And depending on what support they had, what shepherding they had, or what access to unconditional love that they had, will determine how comfortable they are in the shadow of death. Because the separation between the spirit and soul is the valley. You may not agree, but I heal people. So, actually, God heals them. He just uses me to do that. And I had to go through an extraordinary amount of pain and suffering to be able to do that. I know I don't look like it, but I have. And I've also sat with a lot of people who have gone through some pretty wild stuff and has resulted in pretty severe addictions. My father and my daughter's father, who lost his life to a drug overdose shortly after she turned 3. And my father, who passed away when I was 14. He didn't suffer from drugs. He had a food addiction, smoking addiction. But I learned a lot through both of their passings, but I learned even more through their life. Unless you yourself have gone through some kind of complex trauma, or you have a degree in psychology and an intimate and personal relationship with God, you might not even be qualified, right? Because you won't have a gauge of measure to even be speaking for God or calling judgment on anybody that really has nothing to do with you besides your opinion. I don't even know if he went through complex trauma in his life, but I would be willing to bet that he had, because I hear through my heart and I speak the language of love. And my guess would be that he has some kind of separation, or had. I don't know where he's at with his healing, but anybody that could, and this isn't even talking about the child thing. I'm talking about what he went to prison for. Because in order to commit that type of crime, someone has to be in such a state of dissonance that they are completely disconnected from their spirit and their soul. They have to be in the darkest valley, like a cave with no air or sound or feeling. That doesn't just happen. That doesn't just happen. That is a result of some kind of trauma, and he might not even know. He might not even know. He could have had something happen to him as an infant that he wouldn't have any recollection of, and God hasn't designed it for it to be a part of his path yet, to uncover that. And that's between him and God. Just want to caution people before you go wild and out with your judgment of this person. And this isn't a judgment of you either, because a lot of people just don't have the depth of understanding, or again, they have their own wounding that they're still working through. We have no idea what other people are going through in their life. We have no idea the road that they've walked, the path that they've walked. And it's not an excuse for their behavior. And quite frankly, he doesn't make an excuse for his behavior. And I appreciate that. But what I noticed, one, was the courageousness, the boldness. And see, there are some people that I think are gonna maybe interpret that as flippantness or just like an uncaring or whatever. And it's because they are projecting onto him a reaction that is theirs. Like, that's their reaction. And if it's a negative one that they're projecting onto him, that is further evidence of an unhealed soul. That's what that is. You do not realize, the average person doesn't. And maybe to some degree, you want it that way. But the truth is, there are predators all around us. There are children being groomed to be predators right now. Like I said, some of them are all over social media right now. You would have no idea. You know, everybody's always surprised. And everybody's always horrified too. But it's interesting when this person who is actually being quite courageous, and not in a flippant way, but we're talking about multiple decades of separation of the time that this happened, of what he's speaking about. And he's been redeemed. So, of course, he is not going to be able to access, which likely he couldn't even access any emotions at the time, but he's not even going to be able to have whatever reaction it is that other people want him to have. And instead, it might be more helpful to focus on the courageousness and the sort of trailblazing in a way. Because many people have engaged a lot. I mean, especially with, he was 18, and I'm not saying it's okay, but I have a sister that willingly laid down with somebody and got pregnant in those teenage years, and a lot of girls do every year. So I know to us it is easy to demonize someone because of that. But by doing that, by judging him, by exiling him, by making him feel shame for something that God has already lifted the shame off of him, all you're doing is limiting the access that other people that are carrying the same shame are looking for leadership in. You feel me? Look at all the actual pastors and priests that don't ever tell the truth, even after they've been found out or convicted, and they still don't want to speak the truth of what they did. So I would far rather someone be bold and transparent and honest about their crimes, about their behavior. And also, I don't think that he quite cares if there are people that are going to share their opinions or judgment, because those aren't the people that he's called to lead. He's called to lead the people who are ready to receive the word of God to heal their shame. And the thing is like, he's not your next door neighbor. You still have an option. I can assure you, there are thousands of people, men and women, in every city right now that are predatory, that would sooner self-delete than they would you know who they actually are. So when someone is courageous and bold enough, even if you find it disgusting, even if whatever your personal feelings are, be careful with your commentary and the judgment you pass, because the people that are sitting in that shame, the people that are in the same position as he was at that time, which I assure you, there are a lot of them who have suffered trauma, who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, who suffer from whatever his diagnosis is, whether it's probably multiple personalities or OCD or bipolar or narcissism, I don't know, but it's irrelevant, because there are people that right now, politicians, judges, teachers, pastors, waiters, waitresses, mailmen, coaches, referees, a lot more than you definitely realize, that are struggling with that God is calling them to release it. God is calling them to their own redemption. And they also are listening to the commentary. They're seeing through his experience and through the reactions of people how they handle that language, how they handle that boldness, that courageousness, and also how he handles it. You already know that God is the only one that can judge and measure the heart of anyone. God is the only one that knows. God is the only one that sees the full picture. And so you'll have no idea who God will use. And again, if you're a Christian and you follow the word of God, you'll be hard pressed to find a disciple that wasn't a sinner. And so keep that in mind when you're passing your judgment. Keep all of that in mind. And it doesn't mean you have to go support him. It doesn't mean you got to move to his neighborhood or be his best friend or donate to whatever his cause is. It doesn't mean that at all. Just get some makeup for jacket. But you also don't have to pass judgment. And you don't have to say everything that comes to your mind. You don't have to use him as a punching bag for what somebody else did to you. Whatever other experience you had that has nothing to do with him. You can just appreciate the fact that to some degree, he's the one who has to live with it. And now, for God, for his faith, he is willing to take even more persecution. Because no matter who says what, there's still going to be some bitter old Betty, somebody somewhere out there. I listened to a couple of them for about 10 or 15 seconds. And I can tell you, they definitely have closed hearts. But a feeling of indifference would be what you really should kind of aim for. For me, because I have traveled many times into the kingdom of darkness and sometimes been held there against my will for quite a while, but I've never fallen there. I've never struggled with addiction. Like I said, codependency would be the closest that I really came to an addiction. And for whatever reason, that was a part of my path. I was always rescued by God. I was always protected and saved and removed because I've lost a lot of people to drugs and alcohol. And I know a lot of people that have gone to jail And I definitely have known some predators. That's for damn sure. So I know that there's nothing I could say to those people who are in that space that's really going to teach them. And what's happening personally to me in my life right now is a great example of that. I've been trying to minister to this group of people for the last couple of years. I really haven't had much of a choice, in hopes that they would have some self-reflection and seek redemption themselves, seek forgiveness themselves. But see, that's the thing too. Nobody is qualified like the good Lord to place the fear in man like the good Lord himself. And especially as a woman, it's important you understand this. You are not going to heal someone that is suffering from addictions. Believe me, nobody knows that better than me. My daughter's father's anniversary of his death is tomorrow, actually, and on his headstone, the inscription says, "If love could have saved you, would have lived forever." And it's the truth. The only love that can save them, redeem them, is God's love. And it is available to everyone. There is no person, no religious affiliation, no one that gets to decide who gets forgiven and who doesn't. Now, that's up to them. In the case of the group of monsters that have been attempting to take my life and harm me and my children, they don't want redemption. They don't care. They don't care about what their actions have caused. They don't. They won't stop until they're stopped or until God calls final judgment. But I can recognize that God is giving them grace and mercy. Like, that's a part of why I've continued to minister them. And that's also part of what does qualify certain people to be able to call down judgment. Because when you reach a certain level of mastery, that you are self-aware enough and introspective enough to take accountability in whatever scenario you have, but you've traveled enough, you've had enough real world experience, enough knowledge, and gained lessons that you turned into wisdom through introspection also, and through long prayer and conversations with God to understand what it is you need to understand. And this is part of my purpose. So you're able to look at whatever situation you're in, even if it includes you, and see what it is that you can do through your understanding, your wisdom that you already have of God, and see what is there for you to learn in any given situation. And once you feel like you've done that, if whatever situation, if it does include you, or even if it doesn't, if that situation persists, and see, in this situation, there was such a profound imbalance, because like I said, before any of these people came anywhere in my direction, I had already cleared my karma. There was no karma for me. That's how I actually knew when the judgment did happen, it was going to be terrible. And see, that's another part of being responsible, because you have to know when. You can't just keep approaching spiritual court and throne of grace and be like, Dad, Daddy, these boys won't leave me alone. You can't do that. I mean, you can, but it's not going to really have any kind of result. But for me, initially, like I said, I thought it was just your typical spiritual warfare. Didn't know right away that it was mostly man-made and, a long game strategy to take me out for money. Once I sort of had a better understanding, there was definitely something deeper going on. And then, of course, because I had cleared my karma, which also means like I don't have toxicity in my environment. I'm not drinking or partying or, like my energy is clear. My heart is pure. And I know this because that's when you start to receive blessings. I understood my energy very well. It made it very obvious that there was a restriction happening. And some of you might know that. I know Derek definitely would, because that's a part of why they target divine beings. They target divine beings because of the capacity we hold to manifest from our heart. When you have a clear conscience, a pure heart, you've cleared your karma, you're going to get a divine inheritance, okay? And they target people for their divine inheritances, essentially. So they might want to take whatever is included in that. If it's a church, a ministry, a partner, a spouse, kingdom spouse, and wealth, generational wealth. They didn't even know me at all. So had they taken their time to actually get to know me, they probably wouldn't have taken such drastic action, or maybe they would have. Probably they would have, because it's really all about them. It had nothing to do with me anyways. Like none of them, it's just straight blind hate and jealousy. Whatever the belief that they have that would justify it is false, because again, they don't actually even know me. So they wouldn't have anything to even justify their behavior besides themselves, their own wounding. And more tragic, that they wouldn't seek redemption, they wouldn't ask for forgiveness, they wouldn't focus on their own lives. Like, that's the craziest part. Like, every one of these people probably could have built whatever it is that they wanted for themselves by now, but they've been so hell-bent on coming for me. It's so strange. So strange. I know that, for me anyways, I would feel better knowing that there is somebody who has been redeemed, who has taken accountability, who is demonstrating transparency. And I don't need to understand really anything other than that. And he's serving the kingdom of heaven. That's what he's actually doing. So his words are matching his actions. Okay? And he did serve time. And I know that people probably think that he should serve time, but we do actually have something in the natural world to call judgment upon that. It's called the justice system. And if you want to cast judgment, it should probably be on them first. Because this wouldn't still be happening to me if they were doing their job. There's quite a bit of predators within that system as well. And judging him is not going to protect children. It's not going to protect children. It doesn't serve any child to persecute him, to judge him, to get up on your podcast and give your commentary. That doesn't help a child. It's like useless noise. It's just like adding your opinion where there's already a space with too many opinions and not enough facts and not enough grace, not enough mercy. And for me, anyways, I would feel far better about him being in a church than I would the pastor or priest that is quite comfortable being a predator, likely would remain a predator, quite comfortable, especially with that covering of their position in the church. I would feel better knowing, and I would also feel better knowing that there is somebody out there that is so bold in their faith that when people do want to heal, they have an example of what's possible through the Word of God, through Jesus Christ. God bless David. I'm proud of you, if nobody else tells you that. And I know God's proud of you too.